Welcome back to the Bro Show College Football Playoff Edition. Now, we do have a couple NFL picks for you at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. But we're going to dive deep into all four of the college football bowl games, so the playoff games, starting off with the Indiana Hoosiers taking on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, as we talk about all four of these games, remember, all four teams that have the higher seed are the home team. It is actually played on campus in South Bend in front of touchdown Jesus himself. Before we get into the individual games, Chad, do you think that the home field advantage will be even greater than ever before now that it's a playoff game? Or do you have other thoughts on the situation?
I really hadn't thought about it. I mean, probably, right? I mean, it's if you have a home game advantage during season, maybe the stands aren't full. Maybe it's not people paying really exorbitant amounts for the tickets and stuff. So I think all your big fans, the loud environment, all of that may play a little bit of a bigger factor, I would say. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, we start off with a game where the teams are close enough that opposing fans can easily make the trip and potentially have a chance to fill a lot of Notre Dame Stadium with red. I will be one of those fans. I will be driving over to South Bend on Friday to watch this game in person, rooting hard for my Indiana Hoosiers. And it should go without saying that given I've been on Indiana this entire season on this show, I am taking them +7. I'm not just taking that because I'm a Hoosier fan. I'm not just taking that because they've won me a ton of coins so far this season. But if you look at the on-field factor, I think a lot of it does point to IU. Indiana is the #1 rush defense in the country this season. And we know that Notre Dame is a run-heavy team. They want to run the ball and play defense. They have not really had to play many games from behind this season. And when they have, against Northern Illinois, right, they weren't even able to get the job done there. They rely on getting out ahead and keeping their foot on the gas with defensive pressure and their effective running game. But it's been very difficult to run against Indiana so far this season. Even Ohio State, who beat Indiana, had their worst rushing total of the season against them. So Indiana has a great offense. I've been harping on it all season, how they have great efficiency numbers. I believe that Cignetti is one of the best coaches in the country, and I think he's going to have his team properly prepared for this game. Indiana did not have their team go together to watch the playoff announcement in person. Why? Cignetti said there's nothing for them to watch. We already know that we're making the playoffs. It's a business decision, right? There's nothing to celebrate. Their goal is to win the championship. It starts with getting the job done, +7 against Notre Dame. Frankly, Indiana wins this game outright. I'll be taking a +240 on BroThrow. What's your thoughts on this first playoff game?
So on this first one, I'm with you. I know, looking at your picks today, I know we're going to have a couple of opposite sides here, but definitely not here. Like you said, we've been, successfully riding Indiana all year, and people have been sleeping on Indiana all year. And they felt like those, let's call them the naysayers. They felt like they were right after the Ohio State game. Right. People looked at that game, and I know you mentioned it, but people looked at that game and they're like, oh, they got destroyed. Well, more accurately, what happened was Indiana's special teams lost that game. Like you mentioned, they held Ohio State not only to their lowest rushing yards of the season, but their second lowest total yards of the season. And the only team that beat them in that statistical category was when they lost to Michigan, right? Which was just like, it's Day's daddy, right? So we thought that might happen. But like you said, I mean, I'm going to trust Cignetti and the program that he's built over the last couple of years, specifically with the headwinds that they had coming into this year. I'm going to trust Curtis Rourke, who, by the way, finished third this season in QBR. And the only two players that were ahead of him were Cam Smith and Dylan Gabriel. And if you know those names, it's probably because they were two Heisman finalists this year, right? So Curtis Rourke has been an outstanding quarterback leading his offense. They've been great at running the ball. They've had an outstanding defense. You mentioned it, #1 in rushing defense, allowing fewer than, I think it's 71 or 78 yards, one of the two, 71 yards per game on the ground all season. And I think that really is, like you mentioned, a great matchup against Notre Dame, who likes to run the ball, who likes to play defense. But looking at Notre Dame, and at the risk of using the buzzword that I've over and over claimed I hate, the impressive, let's say, wins that they had this season were A&M and Army, right? I don't know. I love the underdog here. I already have a bet that's been accepted on the money line with Indiana. I like them to win. I've got a 40-1 favorite or 40-1 future for them to win the national championship. I mean, 40-1. Like, people are like, oh, they're not going to win, but 40-1 is pretty nice. So I'm rolling with it, man. I like Indiana, and let's go get it.
If Indiana wins this game, they would take on Georgia. Carson Beck may or may not play that game. The path for Indiana to win the championship has never been brighter. So we on to the next game. The first game on Saturday. The Indiana game is on Friday. One game on Friday, then 3 games on Saturday. SMU heading over to State College to take on the Penn State Nittany Lions. 8.5-point favorites for Penn State. What do you see here?
So I've got Penn State written down. I like Penn State in the game, but I was taking a look back at SMU. You know, you look at Kevin Jennings, the quarterback in SMU, has played outstanding this year. Looking at just some of the quick numbers behind his play, he ranks second in college football with 156.4 passer rating or passer efficiency rating when pressured, and he's going to be pressured by the Penn State defense. You know, 8th in passing efficiency when facing man coverage, something that Penn State lines up in almost 40% of the time. I read a really good article on this write-up, and I agreed with a lot of what it said. A couple of those points that I made. You know, SMU's been solid on defense as well this year, generating pressure in the absence of blitzing, right? So they drop back. They play a lot of ball without putting a ton of pressure via the blitz on the quarterback. And it's going to be interesting, but begrudgingly, I'm going to go with Penn State. You know, again, mentioning the buzzword strength of schedule. Will this matter against Penn State, and who also didn't have exactly, you know, the toughest schedule? But it's kind of a weird line. You know, SMU went in deep in the season. They played Clemson really close, who's obviously also in the playoff here. So it's kind of a big line. And I think that if Penn State gets out early, I think they're going to be able to control the game and beat it by a couple scores.
Every single game of the 4 playoff games is at least a 7-point line. And I think the reason the books are doing that is because of kind of what I talked about at the beginning of the show, and that we don't really know how home field advantage is going to affect things. I feel like in this game, it could be a massive, massive, massive deal and a massive benefit for Penn State. They already have one of the biggest and best crowds in the country. They have one of the biggest stadiums that could fit the most people already in the country. And they already get super hyped up for regular games. The whiteout game every single year, the fans always get insanely crazy. They cause multiple false starts. They really impact the game. Well, now they're doing a whiteout again for the playoff game. Penn State is a very difficult location to get to if you're traveling out of town. Hotels for this game are like $1,500 a night. I don't think there's going to be a lot of SMU fans in the stadium at all, as opposed to the Indiana-Notre Dame game, where I think there's a lot of Indiana fans coming. I can drive from Chicago, get there in an hour and a half, 2 hours, head back the same night, no need for a hotel. Same if you live in Indianapolis. Those are probably 2 massive strongholds of IU fans. I know SMU fans, they got money, they got the boosters, but I think that Penn State is going to have an overwhelming advantage in this game. They have a great defense. I see them rolling in this spot. You know, one of the things I'd said to myself before going into this first round of the playoffs is if I can't see a team winning outright, I can't take them as a dog with the points. And I just don't really see SMU winning this game outright. I know people like to bash on James Franklin for having never won a big game. And while this certainly qualifies as a big game, I think that they're going to have more than enough firepower to get it done. Drew Aller just is coming off his best game of the season against Oregon. He's looking very good. They have 2 really, really strong running backs, great offensive line, great defense. SMU playing in the ACC. Again, they played good teams, but I don't think they played any defense that compares to Penn State. So being at home in that crazy environment, I have to take Penn State here because I just don't see SMU winning here, so I can't take the points.
Yeah, and kind of piling on there, you know, I mentioned the SMU, the way that they've been playing defense. Great article. I'll think of the guy's name. We'll put it in the comments. But someone I like to read a lot of, you know, mention their defense. They get a lot of pressure without a lot of blitzing. But one thing that Penn State does really well, obviously they have Tyler Warren, the best tight end in the league this year. He won the Mackey Award this year. He's going to be able to open it up, right? He's going to be able to expose SMU where they're weakest, which is pass over the middle. And like you said, Drew Aller has really come on at the end of the season. He's really improved his efficiency downfield when he's throwing the ball. They're going to run the ball really well, I expect. And so, yeah, I think I'm not going to say this is my favorite. Indiana's my favorite play this week, but I really like Penn State here.
We're both on the 2 Big Ten teams in the first game. There are 3 Big Ten teams total. So the only game without a Big Ten team is Clemson and Texas. Now, you say, if I'm not willing to take SMU because I think they have no chance of winning, don't you obviously have to say the pick for me is Texas because I think they have no chance of winning? But I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that Clemson does have somewhat of a shot of winning this game. And while I'm not necessarily going to pick them outright, I think that it's a good enough chance that I'm willing to take the plus 12. Texas, we've talked about on previous shows when we talked about the strength of schedule issue. And Texas, they went out and lost to Georgia, who had a backup quarterback the entire second half. That doesn't really help the arguments about saying when they're going against a really good team. Clemson, for all their faults, for all whatever misgivings you want to say about them, has elite top-end talent. Dabo is a master at recruiting. He has gotten 5-star after 5-star and 4-star after 4-star for years and years and years. And while, yes, he hasn't been as prolific in the transfer portal, there is still a lot of studs on that team. Cade Klubnik has really improved his level of play over the course of the season, similar to Drew Aller. I was not really high on him to start the year. I do think he's playing very, very well now, especially in the run game, which is what you're going to need to do because Texas has one of the best secondaries in the country. They have the defensive back player of the year, the Jim Thorpe Award winner. So again, Texas is a very, very good team. Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning, whichever one of them plays QB for them, it doesn't really matter. They have great quarterbacks there. They have great receivers. But Clemson, I trust the coaching advantage for Dabo over Sarkisian. And I think that the offensive scheme and combined with the defense that Clemson has, because they still have a very, very steady defense, I think it's too many points. And I've seen Texas, they haven't really beaten a top team this year. I mean, if we're going to talk bad about Texas A&M for Notre Dame, that's the same win that Texas has. And they've lost to Georgia twice. They beat Oklahoma, fine. They beat Michigan, fine. Those are not great wins. So I'm going to take the points with Clemson. I think it's a little bit too many. Should be a closer game. I think Texas probably wins by 7 or 10.
Yeah, so this is my fade here. I thought about this one kind of deeply, and I spoke with my buddy who's a Clemson alum right after the game finished, a couple weeks ago. He said that Sark's going to shove it up our, mom's watching. So, and again, he's typically got a pretty good thumb on what he thinks is going to happen. And then I kind of looked a little deeper, as an old Southwest Conference rival and current SEC, let's say rival. To the Razorbacks. I do hate to say it, but I think that Sark and the Longhorns are going to advance here, and I think they're going to cover. Like you mentioned, Clemson has, and like we've mentioned before, Clemson gets stronger as the season goes on, at least in the last several years. They'll usually play bad against Georgia or they'll play bad against Auburn or whoever it is that they, their big scheduled game week 1 each year. And then next thing you know, they're in the playoffs or they're playing for a national championship. Like you mentioned, Dabo has 2 national titles under his belt. And they are still one of the elite recruiting teams in the nation. They develop players. Their players generally stay. They have a lot of seniors year in and year out. They have a lot of NFL draft picks, particularly from the wide receiver position, the running back position, the quarterback position, obviously, and their defensive line, interior, and their pass rushers. So always a strong program in the last 10 years. However, I think the difference makers here are going to be, like you mentioned, Texas, number 1 defense in allowed yards through the air. They have an outstanding secondary, and a lot of what Cade has had to do this year is use his legs. You saw it against South Carolina, you saw it against SMU, you saw it, throughout the year. And I think they're going to eliminate that option for him. They're going to force him to throw the ball, and I think there's going to be turnovers, and I think that it's going to be a 2-touchdown game. As much as I hate to say it, I hate the Longhorns, and I like Clemson. They're my secondary route team, but I got to put my money on Texas.
Well, if you want to ride my pick of Clemson or Chad's pick of Texas, go to brothrow.com/YouTube today to sign up for absolutely free so you can get your account ready to go to place all your bets this upcoming weekend and throughout all of bowl season. BroThrow offers NFL, NBA, college basketball, college football, golf, boxing, baseball when it returns, any sport you want to bet on, head over to brothrow.com. They offer the best prices on the anywhere you can find, plus 100 on every single spread and over under. So go to brothrow.com and use the code YouTube to sign up now. Chad, the last game on the slate for the college football playoffs, Tennessee taking on Ohio State. This one should be a fun couple premier programs throughout the history of college football, SEC versus Big Ten. What do you like?
I'm just going to throw it out there. I like Ohio State. I've already got my bets accepted at 7.5. I know it's gone back to 7.5, but I like Ohio State. Tennessee's just kind of been disappointing this year. Obviously they lost the Razorbacks, who really just weren't a very well managed, really, very well run program this year. A few plays away from maybe having an 8-win season, going into a bowl game to where they could maybe win 9. But I just can't, I can't put a lot of faith in Tennessee at this point. Ohio State's number 2 in pass yards allowed. Tennessee number 13 in pass yards allowed. And these are all per game stats. Ohio State 7 in rush yards allowed. Tennessee right behind him at number 8. And Tennessee also, has a very solid front on the edge, on the inside. They're highly recruited players. Probably all 4 of their stars are going to play in the NFL. So both of these teams are at the top in these 2 metrics. Tennessee's better at running the ball and Ohio State's better at throwing the ball, right? So it's kind of an interesting thing. So then I asked myself, okay, 7.5 is kind of an odd number. So, tinfoil Chad coming in, it seems like too much. So I want to take that number, but it's right in line with kind of their power rankings and how I kind of assess that. But I simply can't get out of my head that they lost to the Razorbacks this year and didn't move the ball, scored, 14-19, I think, or 15-19, something like that. And they've had a couple games like that where you just watch this team and it's a completely different team from the one at the beginning of the season that was scoring 50 points a game. So just to me, it kind of feels like an Ohio State bounce back after that embarrassing loss to Michigan. And, this is my least favorite play. I don't feel great about it. So, I'm going to roll with the home team in the shoe and expect them to roll.
I have heard that Tennessee fans have been buying a ton of tickets for this game, and that you can expect somewhere around 30 to 40% Tennessee fans, which is crazy for a team like Ohio State that you'd think would be a big stronghold and not wanting to sell their tickets. But I also agree with you. I think Ohio State is the play here. Tennessee's offense has been kind of Jekyll and Hyde, as you said. But unfortunately, it seems to be against the quality of opponents. When they played bad teams, they do amazing. And when they play good teams, they really haven't been as good. It's not a great sign when you're, as you said, going against an Ohio State defense that is one of the best in the country. And especially because they did lose their last game to Michigan, you can expect that the coaching staff has been on this team all their last few weeks. Like, they got to be practicing extra hard, really more motivation. Last time Ohio State lost to Michigan and made the playoffs, they had that game against Georgia where they probably played their best game under Ryan Day, even though it was a loss. So I actually do expect Day to get his team ready to go for this game. Tennessee relies a lot on Sampson and running the ball, and Ohio State does have an excellent run defense. And Iamaleava, he's looked good at times, but I don't think this is his year. I think that he needs to, kind of get punched in the face and get ready to go back for next year. I don't think he's ready for this game. I'm going to be taking Ohio State minus 7.5 with you as well.
Mm-hmm.
So to recap our picks, we are on all 3 of the Big Ten teams together, and then we are fading each other in the Clemson and Texas game. So feeling good about the Big Ten picks here. Feeling good about the Big Ten advancing for pretty far in the college football playoff.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
All right, let's transition and talk about some NFL. Got a couple games we want to talk about. And the big news, of course, speaking of Big Ten and the Indiana Hoosiers legend, Michael Penix Jr. himself, and from the University of Washington as well, but they're a Big Ten team now too. The Atlanta Falcons have benched Kirk Cousins officially. They said, hey, we don't care that we're paying you all this money. It's time to go with our young stud top 10 pick. But do you think that leads to a Falcons cover this week?
I do. I mean, the good news last week is I was correct about the Falcons covering. The bad news is I was completely wrong about primetime Kirk. It seems that's over, and he's had a great career. Good for Kirk. He's come from all over the place, and Washington, Minnesota, Atlanta, and good for him. He's done what he's needed to do. Maybe the worst contract in NFL history now, other than maybe Deshaun Watson. But I'm a believer in Penix. Like, I love the pick when they drafted him. It was really smart. Post contract with Kirk, it was smart to get him in there. It looks like you want to say something.
I can't believe you're talking about bad contracts and you're looking at the Giants logo on the screen and you didn't mention Daniel Jones.
Well, we're not there yet. Daniel Jones. That poor guy. $160 million quarterback that they released after the first year of the contract. Interesting strategy, guys. But I like Penix. I think he's going to go out there. I think he's going to be a fresh arm. He's going to be a fresh eyes. He's going to move around. And I think that, not to always go back to fantasy football, but we're in the playoffs right now, and there's a lot of guys who have kept all of their guys from Atlanta. Whether it's Drake London, Darnell Mooney, what's his name? Kyle Pitts, all these guys, I think are going to get a fresh restart with a new quarterback this week. And the Giants are just terrible. They're bad. They want the first pick. And and I expect just a bad routing here.
I'm only a little hesitant because the line is so big. I love Michael Penix Jr. Again, he was the Indiana quarterback for 3-4 years. He was oft injured, but he did lead Indiana to a top 12 finish one season when we had Kalen DeBoer as our offensive coordinator and Cade Womack as our defensive coordinator, the current Alabama head coach and defensive coordinator. So we had an elite program then with him. I'm always inclined to bet on him. From a gambling perspective, I'm somewhat concerned that the line is so big for a rookie in his first start. I know that the Giants are a bad team, but they still have a team full of professional players who are all getting paid big money and looking to, potentially get paid in the offseason or in the future. It doesn't necessarily behoove the players to lose. It behooves the ownership and the potential GM and coaches if they're able to keep their jobs. So I think the Giants will be relatively, competitive. I think they'll put up a fight, but I definitely will be leaning towards betting on the Falcons. I don't know if I can bet on the Giants in this game, but I do love the idea that Phoenix has a big game here. I'll be looking on him for prop betting, that's for sure.
Yes, definitely prop bets. And to that point, couple things. So once you get to kind of the final stages of the NFL season, last few weeks, you have to keep in mind all these professional players have contracts with incentives. So these guys aren't just going to go out there and say, "Oh, it's over." Half these guys have whether it's a sack total bonus, whether it's an interception total bonus, whether it's a reception total bonus, yardage, whatever it is, these guys are still going to go out and play. But here's the thing. The Atlanta Falcons this season have completed a total of 3 passes outside of the tackles. And now you have now you have Penix coming in, who is a mobile quarterback or has the ability to be mobile. Kirk doesn't. And he's
more mobile than Cousins, that's for sure. But I don't think he's going to be running like Jaden Daniels.
No, he's no Cam Newton, but he's going to be able to move outside the pocket. And he was an incredibly accurate quarterback in college football. And now he has what I think is maybe the best offensive weapon set maybe in the NFL between Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Darnell Mooney, and others. So I think we'll see, but I think he's going to perform much better than what Kirk has been able to do.
And the other thing about Michael Penix Jr. is, as I mentioned about Indiana, he was injured virtually every season at IU, and including tearing his ACL twice. So when he went to Washington, one of the big things that I noticed was he was very, very fast to throw the ball away, throw it incomplete. If there was any pass rusher that got anywhere close to him, he's not willing to get hit anymore, right? So while he will run a little bit, his knee injuries have made him certainly a little bit less mobile. I wouldn't be thinking that, but these quick passes, I think, are going to be very, very effective for Penix and in the Falcons game, especially when it comes to, again, prop betting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last NFL game we want to talk about, Patriots and the Bills. Bill Belichick, the former Patriots coach, accepted a job with North Carolina. So that will be very interesting to see what happens next year there. But his former team, ironically, with North Carolina quarterback Drake May, got some symmetry there, taking on the Bills' MVP favorite Josh Allen. It's a lot of points, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Josh Allen's the best football player in the world right now. And I don't think it's close. Yeah, Lamar Jackson's been great. He does have, more yards, same touchdowns, fewer turnovers. But in the last half of the season, the last 6 games, Josh Allen has been absolutely incredible. Shout out to Josh Allen on, again, on my fantasy team. Sorry, Kelsey. I'm so sorry, buddy. And Keith, you guys just fell down to that. It's so funny. Anyway, yeah, Josh Allen's the best player in football right now. The Bills are playing great. McDermott now has 5 seasons in a row, I think, with 11 or more wins, which is great. They haven't been able to do anything in the postseason necessarily, haven't gotten to the big game or even won the AFC. But I just, the Patriots aren't very good. I think their season total was 5.5, and they're not going to make that. And, they have beaten, what they beat the Chiefs by? And then what did they beat the Bills by? It was 14 points, right? Or close to it. They've beaten the 2 number 1 teams in the NFL easily. I say easily as far as the score goes. So I would expect nothing different here. Now, this is a perfect spot for the NFL to do what the NFL does and make this a 3-point game. I don't know. But
it was a 9-point
win
over Kansas City. 9 points over Kansas City.
Okay, 9 points over Kansas City, number 1 team in the AFC, and then 10, 14 against the Bills. I can't remember now. Or not the Bills, I'm sorry. Detroit, who was the number 1 team in the NFC. So I just don't see this as a roadblock for them.
It was only a 6-point win last week because the Lions got a last second touchdown.
That's right.
The garbage time magic.
I went to bed. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about, guys. Jeez. But either way,
listen, if for anyone who's still watching at this point in the video, they are true loyal fans. Truly
hey, we had
legends.
a bump last week.
It's true. It's true. Truly
I think,
legends in the
Jake,
BroThrow
honestly,
community.
at this point, I think the smartest bettors are watching this show. Because if the smartest bettors are watching this show, they're watching this show and they're immediately going on and taking our action and they're making money. So good for you guys if that's what you're doing. But anyway, Bills, let's roll.
Well, we appreciate all you guys who are still here and hearing this now. Show got off the rails a little at the end. I know we appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Again, BroThrow.com/YouTube to sign up today. Take your best bets and win more money. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Chad, anything that you want to leave the viewers with before you go on this one?
Yeah, last week I said I wasn't going to bet the Chiefs games anymore, but I was like, you know what? Jake's smart. Jake's sharp. I'm going to go ahead and take some Browns action out there. 4 points seems odd, and then now I'm 22-45-3 betting Chiefs games. So,
well, as I mentioned, my team that I've been getting screwed on the most was the Eagles, and Steelers could not cover again either. So
there it is.
There it is. All right, we'll see everybody in the next one. Take care.